Welcome to Better Than Ever Live, wherever you're watching, wherever you're listening. I hope you're making today and this Thanksgiving week in general, hoping you're making it your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. I help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injuries, or medical conditions. Very excited to be here on this beautiful but a little chilly Tuesday afternoon. Now, chilly for us in Charleston, South Carolina is probably a little different than chilly for most people. I think it was low 40s this morning. Now it's probably mid 40s, which is, I love. I don't mind cold or chilly as long as it's sunny, and that's what we have today. Those of you in other countries, maybe in the northern parts of the United States, may hear mid 40s and be really ticked off that I call that cold. As always, I would love to hear from you. If you have comments about what we're talking about, leave those. Please leave your first name and where you are. I'm always curious who is joining us. If you're watching this in a recorded version or you're listening to the podcast version and you want to comment, subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn and watch this live, and feel free to comment or ask questions. Little housekeeping. I will be here tomorrow for a bonus Better Than Ever Live. Same idea. Lots of health and wellness and exercise and aging and sleep and nutrition studies to talk about sort of a bonus episode leading into the Thanksgiving holiday. Will not be here Thursday because it is Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And I'm also not doing a show on Friday. I had planned on doing an Ask Dr. Geier Live, but I've been working really, really hard so far this week, and we'll be working through tomorrow's live show all morning tomorrow. And then I'm taking 4.5 days off, and I'm really excited about that. So I will not be here on Friday, but we'll do Ask Dr. Geier Live sometime soon. And as always, any information, any really topic I discussed today, this is meant for information and educational purposes only. It is not meant for specific medical advice. If you have specific medical questions, medical concerns, please talk to your doctor. All right, unless you've been living under a rock, hello Robert, unless you've been living under a rock the last week or so, you know that Adele has a new album. Now, I don't particularly care about celebrity gossip and things like this, but it has irritated me. Let's just say that there's been so much focus on her weight loss. I think it's great that she looks great and, more importantly, feels great. I'm all for it. And any of you that feel like you need to lose weight, want to look better, do what you need to do from a health standpoint, assuming it's a healthy practice. I'm all for it. But my concern with it a little bit has been there's been so much focus on her weight loss that maybe it sends the wrong message to younger girls who struggle with body image issues, saying that, hey, this is how you get attention. You lose 100 pounds, you look fantastic. That's the only way to get attention in this society. And unfortunately, it's sort of, in my opinion, what it looks like to me is it overshadows how good of a singer and how good of a performer she is. That's not what we're talking. Well, it is what we're talking about, but not in that context. So there is an article, this was, I saw online, and I don't know that this is true. This is a little bit of speculation, but it sounds like well-based speculation on how exactly she may have lost 100 pounds. Now, she talks about how she worked out like crazy, but in fact never dieted. In fact, she ate even more. But according to this article, a nutritionist is claiming that she followed a diet that he created. And it goes like this. So apparently Adele is a member of KX, which is like an exclusive health club in Chelsea, part of London. And that gym, that health club, has a nutritionist named Glenn Matten. And he wrote a book called The Cert Food Diet, SIRTFOOD diet. And apparently he is telling people in interviews that he talked to Adele's trainer about this diet. That trainer put all of his clients on it, including Adele. They all looked great and never starved themselves. Well, let me tell you a little bit about what it is, and then I got a little bit of an issue with that. But so if you go on to Amazon, you'll see a book written by this guy, Glenn Matten, called The Cert Food Diet. And what it supposedly claims is that he teaches you to eat foods that encourage fat burning by activating sirtuins, or sort of informally known as the skinny genes. And basically, if you eat a lot of sirtuin triggering foods, that has the same effect on weight loss as fasting does. So here are some of the foods that cert food diet would focus on. Things like strawberries, dark chocolate, buckwheat, dates, celery, kale, walnuts, olive oil, coffee, and wine. Basically the Mediterranean diet. But it gets rid of processed foods. We've talked about that. Gets rid of sugar, gets rid of full-fat dairy, and most starches. Well, I don't know about foods that trigger sirtuins, but if you get rid of processed foods, sugar, dairy, and starches, you're probably going to lose weight and you're going to feel a ton better. One little issue, I don't know if anything about this diet. This is the first time I had ever heard of it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. I think focusing on all that stuff you just got rid of is probably the more important part, rather than eating, kale and strawberries and things like that. But a Mediterranean diet is thought to be very good for you. I do have an issue with medical providers, whether it's doctors or in this case nutritionists, that like to brag about who they took care of. And I guess he doesn't do it directly. He talked to Adele's trainer, but he's still basically taking credit for her weight loss. It does remind me, and orthopedic surgeons are the worst about this, and especially sports medicine. I'm the doctor of the Tennessee Titans or the Seattle Seahawks or things like this, because they know that people see that, they think they must be the best, and they're going to go see that doctor. The problem is, what a lot of Americans don't realize, a lot of people all across the world realize, because I doubt this is just an American problem, is that a lot of times those team doctors are selected not based on who's the best in that area, but by which hospital system pays the most money for the rights to be team doctor. It's not universally true, but it's largely true. And so that is one thing, but there is a doctor, and he's great. He was president of the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine when I was on the board of directors. Neil Elitrash, real nice guy, has done tons for sports medicine and research for many, many decades. But in every media interview I see with him, he's quoted as being the doctor that did Tom Brady's ACL surgery. The only way they would know that is if he is actively promoting it. Doesn't really sit well with me. He's a fantastic guy, but I just don't feel like you need to be bragging about who you took care of. I think that patients come first. Now, to be fair, Tom Brady openly talks about it. He did a question and answer with Neil Elitrash at the AOSSM annual meeting, so clearly he doesn't seem to care. It's just a little kind of pet peeve of mine, just like this nutritionist insinuating that he's responsible for Adele's weight loss. Try that diet, read that book. I don't know much about it other than it sounds like the Mediterranean diet, and you're getting rid of a lot of bad foods, which are going to help with weight loss. All right, I talked about this a little bit a few weeks ago, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but yet another study shows that kids, and really all athletes that suffer a concussion, that bed rest and being in a dark room is not the answer. Researchers at Penn State figured out that athletes after a concussion do better if they start light exercise fairly early, 24, 48 hours of rest, and then you start light exercise, walking, elliptical, stationary bike, but just enough to kind of get the heart moving, the muscles moving, but not enough to trigger symptoms. Then as your normal concussion symptoms gradually get better over the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you can increase your exercise and then slowly work back into training. But that seems to do much better than what we taught for decades about you've got to be, no exercise, bed rest, dark room, no studying, all that. At least as far as the bed rest versus exercise seems to be the thing. I don't actually know, Robert, if she had weight loss surgery or not. I to be honest, it's none of my business, and I'm not sure I'd believe anything online anyway. If she did, I have actually had no issue with it, but I don't have any knowledge. But this is alleging that it's more this diet. Who knows? All right, speaking of diet, but in a different context, do you in your life have maybe a husband or a wife or kids who are picky eaters? I bet we all know somebody, maybe we're picky eaters. Maybe you watching or listening are a picky eater. You only like to eat certain things. I am certainly a creature of habit. I try to eat healthy, but I eat the same 10 or 12 things all the time. That's just kind of how I am. If I go to restaurants, I eat the same thing at the same restaurant every time. Once I find something I like, I tend to stick with it. But some people, literally, it's their kids, it's just chicken fingers and fries or that type of thing. Well, it looks like there may be a better way to handle it rather than just saying, hey, eat your vegetables or eat, whatever this is. Study out of Duke, they took 19,000 people who were picky eaters and then had those people describe their personal experiences with foods they didn't like, including how the people around them interacted with them about those food dislikes. And then they used, I don't know how this works, artificial intelligence to better understand those experiences and how they emotionally impacted those picky eaters. All right, whatever. But what they found out is, and this actually is interesting, when people forced the picky eaters to eat something, it didn't go well. That was a negative experience. What worked better was positive encouragement. Encouraging and supportive efforts. Now, that's not, hey, you can do it, not that type of encouragement. This is what they're talking about. Encouraging the picky eater to help them with the food preparation or having a conversation about the nutritional value and nutritional benefits of certain foods or being more flexible and giving them a little bit of input in what the meal is going to contain and rather than just telling them what not to eat. So I don't know necessarily how well that would work on adults, but when you're talking about younger kids, I can absolutely see that being beneficial. If you want them to eat more vegetables, have them involved in cooking the vegetables and talking about why these vegetables, what healthy benefits they have, and giving them a little bit of input on what the meal's going to have, a little bit of give and take. You might be able to slowly, over time, have them be not such a picky eater, and then maybe that's less chicken tenders or chicken fingers and fries. All right, this study probably won't affect many people, but I love this. One of the things that is a little frustrating with all these studies is that you have some intervention and you get like an 8% drop in some metric, and you're like, does that really mean anything? This study, although it doesn't apply to many of us watching, even though it would apply to our kids, this, in my mind, means something. So, Children's Hospital of Los Angeles teamed up with Disney Junior to create a virtual reality experience for kids undergoing surgery. Over 5 million kids every year in this country have surgery, and over half of them experience anxiety related to that. And it makes sense. If you've ever been in an operating, it's really cold. I mean, really, really cold. Everything's blue. You got all these people wearing gowns and masks. Well, the masks may not be all that scary now with the pandemic, but generally all these crazy looking people, it smells funny, then the anesthesiologist puts this mask over you and tells you to breathe in air. If I'm a 6-year-old or 8-year-old kid, that would terrify me too. So, and it matters because if kids go to sleep for the surgery anxious, they wake up irritable. Whereas if they're calm, they wake up calm. They don't need as much in the way of pain medicines after surgery. So what Children's Hospital of Los Angeles and Disney Junior did, they took this, I don't know this TV character, but apparently there's a character named Doc McStuffins, and they created a virtual reality experience called Doc McStuffins, Doctor for a Day. And what they did is that basically these kids did this virtual reality experience where they were Doc McStuffins and they sewed together stuffed animals with a seam, or they used a wand to listen to the heartbeat of another stuffed animal, and basically replicated what's called medical play. That basically you're allowing them to sort of work through their anxieties and feelings about surgery in this sort of calm, peaceful environment. It reminds me a little bit of when I was in high school. I volunteered for a few summers at a children's hospital in Memphis called Le Bonheur. I'd have to wear this blue t-shirt with a little Le Bonheur pink heart on it and khakis, and I worked in child life in that department where you'd go talk to kids and play games with them as they were about to go through surgery. It was really, looking back, a really, really great experience. But what they found, they did 51 kids went through this Doc McStuffins Doctor for a Day virtual reality. 97% of the kids felt more comfortable at the hospital. 74% were less frightened before and after surgery. Again, that may not be a big deal. You may not have any children or somebody going through surgery. That makes me really happy. That is really making a difference for people, and just felt like I would share that with you. All right, complete change of subject. We're still talking about kids, but let's talk about marijuana and pregnancy. So apparently pregnancy or cannabis use during pregnancy is going up, which to me seems surprising, but it is. Well, there's a new study published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences that found that women who used cannabis during pregnancy, it actually has effects on their kids later in life. What they did, these researchers took 322 mother-child pairs. 71 of the 322 mothers used cannabis during pregnancy. These are the effects that the kids of the mothers that use cannabis had that the children of the non-marijuana using mothers didn't have. So the children of the cannabis use during pregnancy, the kids were shown to have increased levels of stress, anxiety, aggression, and hyperactivity. And what they found is that the placentas of those women actually had genetic changes that were consistent with the anxiety and stress of the kids. What they found is that children born to women that use cannabis during pregnancy, higher levels of the stress hormone cortisol, which we've talked a lot about. They had increased anxiety and hyperactivity on behavioral assessments, and the girls of mothers who use cannabis during pregnancy had higher levels of aggression. Now, this isn't saying that if you're a pregnant woman and you use marijuana during pregnancy, your children absolutely will have issues with stress and anxiety and behavioral issues, but it could set them up, put them at risk for it. It just isn't necessarily a cause and effect. Just something to think about. All right. I personally am not that much of a conspiracy theorist. I don't read, the UFO stuff and Area 51 or even political conspiracies. I tend to take things, for the most part, at face value. I'm always skeptical, but I just don't go down these rabbit holes about everybody's out to get us. But I will tell you, I did read a book, and it's not conspiracy theories, but it is scary, a book called Salt, Sugar, Fat, or Sugar, Salt, Fat, Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss, that looks at the rise of processed foods and soft drinks in our diets and how the food companies and various entities really got us hooked on all of these, got them to be part of our lives. Well, there's I want to say it's an article. It's not a study that is worth reading. It was written by a researcher at University of Connecticut, Rudd Center for Food Policy and Health. And what he does is he studies food marketing. And he has serious concerns about how food and beverage companies market sugar-filled drinks to kids. And so let me just go through some of this. If anything, it might make you a little mad. First of all, when you look at advertising for food in this country, $14 billion a year is spent. $14 billion is spent on advertising food products. Just ballpark, what percentage of that do you think is highly processed foods? 20%? 40%? 50%? No. 80% of ads for food products on TV and in the media are highly processed foods. Now, specifically when we're looking at drinks, we can talk about fruit juices, when we're talking about fruity drinks, or sort of fruit-ish type drinks, fruit-flavored vegetables. They give an example of Sunny D versus orange juice. Orange juice, 100% oranges. Sunny D, sort of an orange-flavored water. Capri Sun, a flavored water. And what this guy's saying is all these kind of fruit-flavored beverages that don't have much fruit juice are all sugar and artificial sweeteners, very little of what's healthy. Well, young kids, 2 years old to 5 years old, see twice as many ads for sugar-filled drinks than they do for unsweetened juices. So no matter how good you are as a parent trying to keep them from it, if they're watching TV, children's programming, they're probably going to see ads for unhealthy beverages. But it's not just advertising. They do it with cost as well. These companies keep the prices of sugar-filled drinks and artificially sweetened drinks with low nutritional value low, and the fruit juices basically are more expensive. Over the last 12 years, The price of unsweetened juice products has gone up 4 cents per ounce, but for the sweetened drinks, it's only gone up 1 cent per pound. So they keep them lower price on purpose to make it easier for people to buy. They also have misleading labels. So yes, rather than promoting all the sugar or artificial sweeteners they have, they'll put a picture of fruit on it. Or they will say things that aren't necessarily, they don't mean anything, like natural, but there's no regulation by the government as to what natural is. They may put vitamin C on there, but again, they don't promote the sugar or the artificial sweeteners. So this is what you're up against if you're a parent of young kids trying to have them drink healthy beverages. Advertising, cost, misleading labels are all against you, but do everything you can, because all that sugar, all those artificial sweeteners for young kids may not be the best thing out there. All right, complete pivot. Speaking of low 40s, I don't know what the temperature is where you are, but this is the time of year, fall heading into winter, where we get what's known as seasonal affective disorder. Now, I know there's a lot of people that think this is nonsense, that's not a real thing, but what that means is excessive sleepiness, you crave carbs, anxiety, and weight gain. Basically, sort of a depression. And the thought is that the further you live from the equator, the more likely you are to have seasonal affective disorders. Well, a new study shows just which states have the highest risk of seasonal affective disorder. And one of those two, I think you could probably guess pretty easily, and that's Alaska. And, it's a long way from the equator. They have a very shortened, 34 to 36% of light of their day is light. So 2/3 of their day is in the dark. But the second one might surprise you, and that is probably why they all have moved here to Charleston, and that is the state of Ohio. For whatever reason, second most likely to have seasonal affective disorder. And if you've ever come to Charleston, you absolutely know that it's literally Ohio South. They've all moved down here. Just go to any sports bar on a Saturday that Ohio State's playing. You'll see what I'm talking about. In fact, the local baseball team has a go back to Ohio night. I'm completely serious about that. Other states vulnerable to seasonal affective disorder: Minnesota, Montana. That makes sense kind of with their latitudes. But the states least likely to deal with it: Hawaii, that makes sense. I mean, average winter temperatures 67 degrees. That's pretty good. Florida, Arizona, California, Nevada all make sense. Missouri kind of surprises me. Spending a year in St. Louis working with the Cardinals and the Rams, that place gets cold in the winter, and so I'm a little surprised that has one of the least. But if you want to prevent seasonal affective disorder, fairly simple. Get outside, get some sunlight, exercise more, maybe vitamin D supplements if you need to see a physician, cognitive behavioral therapy, and try light boxes. They make these blue light boxes. You can buy them on Amazon or lots of places. I used to have one. I would just always forget to use it. But in theory, the blue light that keeps us from sleeping at night is actually good for preventing your seasonal affective disorder. We got fighting words there. I actually have no problem with Ohio or Ohio State. They're usually really nice people, but good Lord, they love to talk about Ohio. People always like, if you liked it so much, why did you move down? But if you ask them, it's usually the weather. All right, a study out of Iowa State, not Ohio State, looks at sitting and its effect on health, but not health in the way that we typically talk about it. They surveyed 3,000 adults at the beginning of the pandemic, April 2020 to June 2020. Now, they looked at mental health, and obviously April 2020, our mental health was awful at the beginning of the pandemic. But what they found is over those 8 weeks, it gradually got better. But people that sat more didn't seem to see those improvements. And remember, during the pandemic, so many people worked from home, so they were sitting all the time. And then when they weren't working, they were watching Netflix and streaming shows and everything. So the people that sat more actually got more depressed. They didn't see the mental health improvement that most of the population that was active saw. Now, was it that the sitting led to more depression, or were more depressed people more likely to sit? And that's the hard part to know. But sitting all hours of the day may not be good for your health, which makes it really important to exercise as much as you can. Now, there are studies that show that even a bout of exercise at the end of the day doesn't make up for sitting 8, 10, 12 straight hours. So finding ways to move throughout the day, very, very important. Taking the stairs, walking around the office instead of just emailing people. When you're on the phone, stand up, walk around. Standing desk or even a treadmill desk, anything you can to kind of get moving throughout the day. Or those exercise snacks we talked about last week. All could be very, very important to limiting the amount of sitting you do on a daily basis. And I'm preaching to the choir because I have this issue too. I get it. Even though I have a standing desk, but this in front of me is a standing desk, and one of the offices where I do work, I have a standing desk. But I still sit way too much. But you can improve your physical health, and it looks like, according to this study, you can improve your mental health. I love lifting weights. I think I've made that really clear. I'll do cardio. In fact, I had recently kind of gotten back into the cardio habit in addition to lifting weights. But you have sort of runners especially, but a lot of cardio people that are like, cardio's the best. And then you have weightlifting people, strength resistance training. They're like, no, this is the best. Well, at least when it comes to markers that could influence metabolic health and longevity, one may be better than the other. New study in the Journal of Applied Physiology looked at levels of what are called mitochondrial-derived peptides. The peptides are the powerhouse of the cell. They help generate energy for the cells, which is good for our whole body. Mitochondrial-derived peptides essentially do the same type of thing. And certain types of exercise stimulate mitochondrial-derived peptides. So they took people, put them into 3 groups. One that cycled 45 minutes at 70% of their VO2 max. One that just did strength training, was basically leg press and knee extension, and the third did nothing. They were controls. And what they found in the endurance group that cycled for 45 minutes at 70% of their VO2 max is they were the only group that had an increase in these mitochondrial-derived peptides. Basically, that translated into better blood sugar levels, better cholesterol levels, better blood sugar, and a better waist circumference, which could affect down the road longevity and metabolic health. All good. I actually have no issues with that. Whether that's high intensity interval training or steady state cardio, I think that the jury's still out on that. But I will tell you that does not mean that you only do cardio with no strength training. Resistance training is very good for bone health and keeping your muscles strong, better balance, less chance of falling as you get older. Lots of good reasons to lift weights. So I would tell you to find ways to do some of both. One is not better than the other. All right, I'm going to tell you something a little embarrassing real quick. I don't know if it's embarrassing. So I've worked with a voice coach. He's also one of my media strategists. But a long time ago, he worked with me on my voice and really completely rebuilt my speaking voice. Like what you're hearing now is not how I used to talk. But one of the things I had to do early on, because I was a heavy mouth breather and still am to a certain extent, is that I had to tape my mouth. Now, I would do it sometimes just in the day to learn to breathe through my nose, and then I had to learn to sleep with my mouth closed with it taped. Now, I don't do that anymore, and I probably need to go back and doing it, but it gets to this idea of is sleep. One of the things that's a big trend apparently on TikTok right now is this idea that you should tape your mouth when you sleep. And the theory goes like this, that through your nose, it warms the air, keeps your mouth from drying out, it's good for your teeth, it prevents bad breath, may help with snoring. Well, and it wasn't just my vocal coach. There are sleep coaches that promote, either using tape and I don't remember the name of it, but there's a tacky substance that you can put on your lips that sort of keeps them together, but you can pop it open if you need to, whereas tape is a little tougher to deal with in the middle of the night. And there's just a new article sort of looking at the health behind it. And to be fair, there just aren't that many studies to really say good or bad. I don't know that it's terribly harmful, but it's something that if you've got issues with allergies or asthma or you're congested at night, maybe you don't do it or you talk to a doctor. If you've had alcohol that night or taken a sleep medication or some kind of sedative, you probably definitely shouldn't do it, because in the middle of the night, if you need to breathe and you're struggling, if you're sedated, that might not go so well. But if you're going to try it, and again, I'm not necessarily saying you should do this, but it's and if you're going to do it, I would tell you do it during the day. Get used to that before you try it at night. So there are surgical tapes like this, which work really well. And this is what I started with, but I found something better. You would just tear off, a piece of this. I don't know what this surgical tape's called. It's a 3M tape, transport. I don't know, and you just go like that. What I've found works better is what's called paper tape, and it really is much more of a paper. It's easier to tear, because what I found with this is if you wake up in the middle of the night, especially if you sleep on your side or stomach, it sticks to you and it's really hard to get off, whereas the paper tape is much easier. But try it during the day, see how that goes for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. And a book about breathing, Oxygen Advantage by Patrick McCowan, I think it's McCowan, talks about taping and breathing through your nose too. So it's an interesting idea. Again, it may sound weird, but breathing through your nose is thought to be good. Whether it's taping your mouth to do it or not, I guess, is the question. All right, we talked a little bit a few weeks ago, in fact, a number of times, about telomeres and their roles in aging. And so let me sort of refresh that again. Telomeres are the caps on the end of your DNA. The cells in our body divide, but once those telomeres, the protective caps on the ends of the chromosomes, and the ends of the DNA basically die, or they're gone, then the cell stops dividing. But then that cell isn't just going away, it remains as a senescent cell, basically this damaged cell that's not doing anything. Those accumulate over time, and it's thought that the accumulation of those senescent cells is what leads to all our age-related degenerative diseases: cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, dementia, diabetes, arthritis. And so we've got to figure out, or at least what the theory goes, if we can improve our telomeres, protect our telomeres, maybe those cells keep dividing, it increases our longevity. So what this study in nucleic acids research found is that what's happening when our cells stop dividing is that the telomeres, we lose the telomeres, then the cap off one of the chromosomes basically is abnormal. It's sort of like now it's sticky. It creates a permanent dysfunction, a permanent genetic damage, so to speak. Now one of them sticks to the other, and that DNA is completely useless. And that's what leads the cell to become damaged, unable to divide. So where that gets at is if we can target the genes that are involved in the telomeres basically falling off, going away, we might be able to prevent some of that cell damage and what we call inflammaging. That's a term you're going to hear a lot over the next few years. Inflammaging is basically the accumulation of these senescent cells and inflammation that lead to cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia, arthritis, things like that. So we may find a drug or peptide type treatment to direct, basically to live longer and healthier. So that's something to keep an eye on. Mark my words, you're going to hear about that a lot over the next 5 years. And speaking of longevity, there are trade-offs that come with longevity. And if you don't believe me, you only have to look at rockfish. This is a type of fish, or many types of fish, a category of fish in the Pacific Ocean. There's apparently 137 species, and scientists are really interested in rockfish because some of them are the longest living vertebrates on Earth. They range from the calico rockfish that lives about a decade to the rough-eye rockfish, which lives for more than 200 years. And studying their DNA and all these different things, they found a couple things that are important for us as humans. One, there's a trade-off. The species that live the longest, there's very few of them. They just, I guess, don't need to reproduce. Whereas the ones that don't live very long, the decade, there's just tons of them, millions of them. And you see that in mice versus elephants, which live a long time, and maybe true with us as well. Second, the rockfish that live a long, long time have a higher quantity of immune modulating diseases that target inflammation. This is something I keep saying, we're going to keep saying. Inflammation is the biggest driver of poor health as we get older, age-related diseases, and shorter lives. And so finding ways to target these immune modulating genes and conquering inflammation could be a big battle or a big victory for us in terms of inflammation and aging and living longer. Last two things real quickly. Sometimes it's not about just getting older and being more active and healthier. You just want to look younger too, right? New study looks at 5 habits that make you look older. That's right. Make you look older. In fact, a lot older. First, not wearing sunscreen. And that's something I have fixed over the last few years. I think sunscreen's really good. But what the sun does to our skin is it causes premature aging of the skin and the cells of the skin, making you look older. So wear sunscreen. Even if you're not going to the beach or something, you're just out and about, always a good idea to wear sunscreen. Plus, they're moisturizing anyway, or at least a lot of them are, which can be good for you. Another one, drinking too much alcohol makes you look older. It causes facial flushing, swelling, and broken capillaries in your skin, making you look older. Here's an interesting one, and that is eating too much sugar. So your skin, what makes it firm are 2 proteins, collagen and elastin, and eating too much sugar damages the collagen and elastin, leading to wrinkles and saggy skin. Basically, without the collagen and elastin, the skin can't repair itself and it starts to sag. So eating too much sugar, really bad for you. Fourth, and this is in no order, but fourth would be not getting enough sleep. That should go without saying, but a study in the clinical and experimental dermatology, women who got quality sleep had 30% better skin barrier recovery than women who got poor sleep, and they looked better with less signs of aging. And last, this is not going to surprise anybody, cigarette smoking. You want to stop cigarette smoking. The smoke has all kinds of toxins and chemicals that constrict blood vessels, prevent oxygen and nutrients from getting to the cells in your skin. Really, really bad for you. So if you want to look younger, wear sunscreen, limit your alcohol, limit or eliminate sugar, get lots of sleep, and don't smoke. Sounds like a recipe for not just looking good, but feeling good. And then last, we're heading into Thanksgiving here in the U.S. I'm going to eat way too much. I don't pretend otherwise, but I love it. It's one of my favorite holidays, if not my favorite holiday. And this isn't really a study. It's more of a list of points that I saw in a scientific journal, talks about ways you can stay healthy over Thanksgiving. Now, here's the thing. You're going to eat bad foods, and that's okay. You know, trying to stick to a real strict diet on Thursday is just not all that necessary. You just want to limit the damage. So if you're going to have a day of bad food, fine. Just try to make it that one day, maybe not a 5-day holiday like what I'm probably going to do. But then you want to stay active. Get out and go for a walk, especially after meals. Try to find a way to exercise. Maybe some shopping, but not real stressful shopping. You want to try as best you can to maybe limit how much alcohol you drink. That's going to compound problems, increase stress levels, all sorts of things like that. You want to plan your meals ahead of time and not just have food laying around all week long so you're not nibbling all the time. And you want to eat breakfast, and depending on what time you eat your Thanksgiving dinner, maybe eat lunch as well so you're not as hungry going into the meal. Everybody skips breakfast and or lunch and saves it all up for that meal, but then they end up eating more than if they had just had a normal breakfast. So those are things that you could do to have a healthier Thanksgiving. But to be fair, I am all for you enjoying it, just enjoying it in moderation. Joy says, it's maddening how misleading the companies are for profit over health. Yeah, and I actually don't get as upset about it as some of my friends that just really, really go after the companies making processed foods and soft drinks and things like that. But it is frustrating, and it's really hard because, you know, there's all of us obviously that care about this, and we read and watch all this health news and try to keep up to date, but there's so many people that don't know all of this, and all they know about foods is what they see ads for on TV or in the media, and then what they see at the grocery store, and that is really frustrating. All right, Bill Andrews. Yeah, I'm going to have to check that out because I am fascinated by telomeres and aging. One of the peptides I take, even though I'm about to finish my cycle of it, is a peptide called epithalon, which is an injection that you give yourself for 50 straight days, and it is thought to be protective of telomeres. I'll tell you about that at some point. Robert says, I was a picky eater when I was a child. I don't remember if I was or not. It seems like I was. And I think, Robert, a lot of people are. But I will say that as the son of a doctor and a nurse, I think we at least tried to eat vegetables. But I'm not going to lie, we weren't allowed to have sugared cereals as kids until my parents sent us to stay for a couple weeks with my grandparents in South Florida. And they started giving us things like Cocoa Puffs and Honey Nut Cheerios. And then all of a sudden, we wanted sugar cereals. And then I think I probably got a little more picky about that because I loved sugared cereals as a kid, which really embarrasses me now, but it is what it is. All right, I have got to head to the office. I've got a busy afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I will be here tomorrow if you want a bonus episode. If you're still working on Wednesday or you're just at home and you want to learn more about healthy stuff, normal show. These types of topics tomorrow, noon Eastern time, and then after that, I am off for the week. Thank you so much for joining us, and I will see you right back here tomorrow, noon Eastern. Take care.